You are listening to National Security Media.
We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol, and we're going to try and give. The Democrats are hopeless. They're never voting for anything. Not even one vote. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride, boldness that they need to take back our country.
You Antifa?
Who, me?
Yeah, you
I'm
Antifa?
press.
Are you Antifa?
What does that mean?
Are you Antifa?
I'm press.
You don't understand the question, retard?
I'm press.
Yeah, I'm press. I'm press. I'm press.
Uh-huh.
I'm press. Bitch.
Okay.
Get the fuck out of the way, dude. No, I didn't. Me. I didn't touch you, asshole. You want to start touching? You want to touch? All right, there's looks like there's blood on the floor. A lot of blood on the floor. Looks like it might, from this guy. Not sure if he got hit with something. Well, obviously, but. See the.
Staff Sergeant Aquilino Gonell.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Chairman Thompson, members of the Select Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify regarding the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. It is with honor and heavy heart that I come before you to tell you my story from a painful first-hand experience of what happened that terrible day at the Capitol. I'm providing this testimony solely on my personal capacity and not as a representative of the U.S. Capitol. It is imperative that the events of January 6 are fully investigated, and the Congress and the American people know the truth of what actually occurred, and that all those responsible are held accountable, particularly to ensure that horrific and shameful event in our history never repeats itself. I applaud you for pursuing this objective. Even though there is overwhelming evidence to the contrary, including hours and hours of videos and photographic coverage, there is a continuous shocking attempt to ignore or try to destroy the truth of what truly happened that day, and to whitewash the facts into something other than what they all mistakenly reveal: an attack on our democracy by a violent domestic extremist and a stain on our history and our moral standing here at home and abroad. As a child in the Dominican Republic, I look up to the United States as the land of opportunity and a place to better myself. And from that moment I landed at JFK in 1992, I have tried to pursue that goal. Thankfully, I achieved that goal on many levels. I was the first in my family to graduate college, join the Army, and become a police officer. On July 23rd, 1999, the day before my 21st birthday, I raised my hand and swore to protect the Constitution of the United States. Because this country gave me an opportunity to become anything that I wanted. At that time, I already started basic training with the Army Reserves. In fact, I raised my hand several times in ceremonies to pledge my commitment to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States. When I joined the Army Reserves, when I was promoted to Sergeant War in the Army, when I was promoted during my naturalization ceremony, and when my reenlistment in the Army, when I joined the United States Capitol Police, and lastly, when I was promoted to Sergeant 3 years ago. I have always taken my oath seriously. On January 6, 2021, I fulfilled my oath once more, this time to defend the United States Capitol and members of Congress carrying out their constitutional duties to certify the results of the November 2020 presidential election. To be honest, I did not recognize my fellow citizens who stormed the Capitol on January 6, or the United States that they claim to represent. When I was 25 years old and then a sergeant in the Army, I had deployed to Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom. From time to time, I volunteered to travel on IED-infested roads to conduct supply missions for U.S. and allied forces and local Iraqi population as well. But on January 6, for the first time, I was more afraid to work at the Capitol than my entire deployment to Iraq. In Iraq, we expected armed violence because we were in a war zone, but nothing in my experience in the Army or as a law enforcement officer prepared me for what we confronted on January 6. The verbal assaults and disrespect we endured from the rioters were bad enough. I was falsely accused of betraying my oath, of choosing my paycheck over my loyalty to the U.S. Constitution, even as I defended the very democratic process that protected everyone in the hostile crowd. While I was at the Lower West Terrace at the Capitol, working with my fellow officers to prevent the breach and restore order, the rioters called me a traitor, a disgrace, and shouted that I, an Army veteran and a police officer, should be executed. Some of the rioters had the audacity to tell me there was nothing personal, that they would go through me, through us, police officers, to achieve their goal, as they were breaking metal barriers to use as a weapon against us. Or they use more menacing language. If you shoot us, we all have weapons, we will shoot back. Or we'll get our guns, we outnumber you. They said, join us. I heard specific threats to the lives of Speaker Nancy Pelosi and then also Vice President Mike Pence. But the physical violence we experienced was horrific and devastating. My fellow officers and I were punched, kicked, shoved, sprayed with chemical irritants, and even blinded with eye-damaging lasers by a violent mob, who apparently saw us, law enforcement officers, dedicated to ironically protecting them as U.S. citizens, as an impediment to their attempted insurrection. The mob brought weapons to try to accomplish their insurrectionist objectives and use them against us. These weapons included hammers, rebars, knives, baton, and police shields taken by force, as well as bear spray and pepper spray. Some of the rioters wore tactical gear, including bulletproof vests and gas masks. The rioter also forcibly took out batons and shields to use them against us. I was particularly shocked at seeing the insurrectionists violently attack us with the very American flag that they claim to sought to protect. Based on the coordinated tactics we observed and verbal commands we heard, it appears that many of these attackers had law enforcement or military experience. The rioters were vicious and relentless. We found ourselves in a violent battle, desperate to attempt to prevent the breach of the Capitol by the entrance near the inauguration stage. Metropolitan police officers were being pulled into the crowd. We have one right here, right next to me. As we tried to push the rioters back from the breach in the Capitol, in my attempt to assist two MPD officers, I grabbed one by the officer by the back of the collar and pulled him back to the police line. When I tried to help the second officer, I fell on top of some police shields on the ground that were slippery because of the pepper spray and bear spray. Rioters immediately began to pull me by my leg, by my shield, by my gear strap on my left shoulder. My survivor's instincts kicked in, and I started kicking and punching as I tried in vain to get MPD officer attention behind and above me. But they could not help me because they also were being attacked. I finally was able to hit the rider who was grabbing me with my baton and able to stand. And then I continued to fend off new attackers as they kept rotating and attacking us again and again. What we were subjected that day was like something from a medieval battle. We fought hand to hand, inch by inch, to prevent an invasion of the Capitol by a violent mob intent on subverting our democratic process. My fellow officers and I were committed to not letting any rioters breach the Capitol. It was a prolonged and desperate struggle. The rioters attempted to breach the Capitol were shouting, "Trump, send us. Pick the right side. We want Trump." I vividly heard officers screaming in agony and pain just an arm length from me. I didn't know at that time, but that was Officer Hodges, and he's here today to testify. I too was being crushed by the rioters. I could feel myself losing oxygen and recall thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die, defending this entrance. Many of the officers fighting alongside me were calling for shields because their shields had been stripped from them by the rioters. I was one of the few officers left with a shield, so I spent the majority of my time at the front of the line. I later find out that my wife and relatives were here in the U.S. and abroad. Were frantically calling and texting me from 2 p.m. onward because they were watching the turmoil on television. It was now until 4:26 p.m. after giving CPR to one of the rioters who breached the Capitol in an effort to save her life that I finally had a chance to let my own family know that I was alive. After order has been restored at the Capitol, in many hours, I arrived at home at nearly 4 a.m. on January 7. I had to push my wife away from me because she wanted to hug me. And I told her no, because of the other chemical that my uniform had on. Sorry. I couldn't sleep because the chemical reactivated after I took a shower, and my skin was burning. I finally fell asleep 2 hours later, completely physically and mentally exhausted. Yet by 8 o'clock a.m., I was already back, on my way back to the Capitol. And I continued to work for 15 consecutive days until after the inauguration. I made sure to work despite my injuries because I wanted to continue doing my job and help secure the Capitol complex. More than 6 months later, I'm still trying to recover from my injuries. Many of my fellow Capitol officers, as well as MPD officers, suffer terrible physical injuries from the violence inflicted on us on January 6th. I sustained injuries on both my hands, my left shoulder, my left calf, and my right foot. I already had undergone bone fusion surgery on my right foot, and I was just told that I need surgery on my left shoulder. I have been on medical and administrative leave for much of the past 6 months, and I expect to need further rehabilitation for possibly more than a year. There are some who express outrage when someone kneels while calling for social justice. Where are those same people expressing the outrage to condemn the violence attack on law enforcement, the Capitol, in our American democracy? I'm still waiting for them. As Americans in the world watch in horror what was happening at the Capitol, we did not receive timely reinforcement and support we needed. In contrast, during the Black Lives Matter protests last year, U.S. Capitol Police had all the support we needed and more. Why the different response? Were it not for the brave members of the MPD and later on from other law enforcement agencies, I'm afraid to think what could have happened on January 6th. I want to publicly thank all the law enforcement agencies that responded to assist that day for their courage and their support. I especially want to thank those Capitol Police officers who responded on their own from home after working midnight shift. Despite being outnumbered, we did our job. Every member of the House of Representatives, senators, and staff member made it home. Sadly, as a result of that day, we lost officers, some really good officers. But we held the line to protect our democratic process because the alternative would have been a disaster. We are not asking for medals or recognition. We simply want justice and accountability. For most people, January 6th happened for a few hours. But for those of us who were in the thick of it, it has not ended. That day continued to be a constant trauma for us literally every day, whether because of our physical or emotional injuries or both. While it has not received much attention, sadly, many of my colleagues have quietly resigned from the Capitol because of that day. I'm also regularly called by law enforcement officials and prosecutors to help identify from photographs and videos the rioters. And to be honest, physical therapy is painful and hard. I could have lost my life that day, not once, but many times. But as soon as I recover from my injuries, I will continue forward and proudly serve my country in the U.S. Capitol Police. As an immigrant to the United States, I'm especially proud to have defended the U.S. Constitution and our democracy on January 6th. I hope that everyone in the position of authority in our country has the courage and conviction to do their part by investigating what happened on that terrible day and why. This investigation is essential to our democracy, and I'm deeply grateful to you for undertaking it. I'm happy to assist as I can and answer any question you may have to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your riveting testimony, Sergeant Gonell.
So thank you for listening so far to the testimony that was delivered by the sergeant, and just bear with us while we bring him into the space. We're going to go ahead and just do a fairly straightforward one-to-one to keep it focused. But you can send, first off, let me check with my co-host while we do that. Let's see here.
Hey, Chris.
Good to see you.
Hello, Staff Sergeant Gonell. So happy to meet you, and thanks for joining us. And thanks to everybody else for joining us, too.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for hosting me. I'm sorry I was a little late. I was trying to take care of my mental health and doing a little exercise. So it's been a couple of hectic days for me, so I needed that. So.
I hear you. I live in the country of Oregon, and mental health is a big deal. And, I was joking with Harry a minute ago. He said he was with you, and I said, he says, stay safe. I said, oh, I'm nowhere near you guys. So you come to the United States, and as a young man from the Dominican Republic, and you have this vision of America. What do you remember being the first cool thing that you experienced in the United States?
Growing up overseas and also listening sometime about the principles and values of the American system, and once you make it to the United States, then you have a lot of opportunities, and also you're going to be treated a certain way. That's not always has been the case in terms of the immigrant experience, but the majority of times it is. And you had the opportunity at least to get going, and what you do with that opportunity is up to you. I know that once you, as an immigrant as well, you also face a lot of obstacles and adversity that prevent you. And the first thing is assimilation, learning the country, learning the language, and continue to persevere at whatever obstacles you encounter. I know in my case, based on what I lived through, I expected things to be better, and for a certain time it was, to the point of me learning the culture, learning the language, getting an education, joining the military, becoming a police officer, reaching the middle class, and then also trying to protect and give back to the country, that open arms to myself, and culminating with defending the capital, not only here on January 6th, but also the country in Iraq in 2003.
And let me talk about oath, because one of the things that I know is really not talked about enough is the fidelity to the oath, and more importantly, what is the oath that you gave? Did you give an oath to a man or an individual?
I'm going to tell you, like General Milley said to me one of my last days at the Capitol, when the last World War II soldier passed away and was laying in state at the Capitol in last summer. General Milley said, he pointed out to a challenge coin that he gave me, and that challenge coin says 20th Joint Chief of Staff, and then the back of it is a small Constitution etched into the corner, and he said, "You see this? You see the Constitution? This is what we fucking pledge allegiance to, not this fucking guy that tried to destroy it, and he's gonna pay for whatever he did." At that time, I didn't know that he was on his way out of, to be, with short amount of time left in his retirement. Otherwise, I would have just put it like that in the book. But I didn't want to get him in trouble, so I kind of like switched the language a little bit to not to be perceived as partisan. But the mere fact that we had sworn an oath not to a person, but to an ideal, to a country, and a lot of the service members that attack us on January 6th, they sworn an oath to the same Constitution, to the same flag, and a lot of them, they continue to downplay what happened. A lot of them continue to express support for this person who clearly shouldn't be near the White House. And
Right.
2 weeks ago, I was in court for one guy that served in Afghanistan, I believe, and another one in Iraq. And both of them were using their military service to get leniency from the judge. And one of them was explaining that he had been struggling with his PTSD, he had been this or that. I sympathize with that, but at the same time, I have in my prepared remarks, and I told the judge, you know what, Your Honor, I'm not going to read my prepared remarks. I'm going to actually tell you something else, because it bothers me that some of the military members, veterans, and people who claim to support the Constitution in this country use that moment to attack us. And then in court, they go in front of the judge and ask for leniency based on just that. But on January 6th, they did not care that I was doing my job. They did not care that I was in a civil disturbance unit riot gear to attack me, where it says police on my helmet. And it wasn't like I was incognito or I was hiding among the crowd with no uniform. They knew exactly what we're trying to do, and what our objective was to restore order. And they didn't care. A lot of service members, a lot of police officers, former military, former police officers, and these are people who claim that they support in back the blue, law and order, the rule of law, and yet they support a person that it had demonstrated what he's capable of, and is running on January 6th alone. There's no platform how he gonna make everybody else's life better. It just, I got cheated, I don't want to go to jail, and therefore you should vote for me. That's the platform that he's running on, and a lot of people continue to support that despite the danger that he represents. And if you look at it this all the way, some of the same people who convicted him for inciting the violence during the second impeachment, they now say if it comes between him and Biden, they're going to vote for the guy who tried to destroy the Constitution, who tried to destroy our democracy, the person that sent the mob to hunt them down one by one, room by room, including his former vice president. And a clear attack on his own branch of government. And they still support that, which is incredible to me.
It is incredible. And let me ask you this, because, a lot of law enforcement or different type of agency folks, it's not in their business plan or life plan to go out and be very big public figures. And between you and our good friend here, Harry, and others, it really wasn't in there. And now suddenly you have to be thrust out in public. Let me ask you a couple of questions about that. First
Officer
off,
Daniel Hodges.
Hey, buddy.
So we have when you have, how do I want to say this? Like when you have lawmakers that walk by you all the time, right, doing your job, who live off the red meat of your safety, What is the vibe in your team going to be like when that's who you have to protect?
I'll tell you this. I mean, after January 6th, before January 6th, I used to believe that at the end of the day, no matter what politics or ideology each party had, at least they would have come together and do the right thing for the country. After January 6th, when they started smearing myself, Harry Hodges, and Fanon, then I came to the conclusion that they're not worth saving, and they're only there for the loss of power and for the benefits of getting clicks online for their campaign dollars. I had the opportunity to come across face to face to some of these members, elected officials, which they know in their heart and in their mind that the person who incited the mob put their lives on the line, and if it wasn't because our efforts, myself and my colleagues did on that day, their lives would have perished. It would have been a onslaught and a massacre on any level, because the people who were trying to breach the Capitol, the people who breached the Capitol, they didn't care which party they belonged to. It was kind of like a loose bullet going down the street. It didn't care
Right.
what your religion was. It didn't care who you supported, whether you were gay, straight, or not. They came to do damage to the Capitol, and had it not because what we got in their way, a lot of things worse would have happened. What bothers me is again, last year before I left, on the same day of that I met Millie, I ran into Lindsey Graham in the elevator by the Senate elevator banks, and I was in civilian clothes, but I had my radio on, and I said, there was a call, and I'm like, Sergeant Gonell, respond to second floor to the rotunda, blah, blah, I'll be right there in a minute. I said loud enough so he'll know who I was, and instead of it's just me and him in the elevator, it's no more than an arm length from myself, and that motherfucker, he didn't say, I'm sorry about what happened to you. He didn't say, how are you? How's your family? Never mind. Nothing. He pretended not to know who I was. He pretended not to listen to what I said. And he shows you, and the last thing he did, he turned pretending that he was on the phone. I know he wasn't on the phone. There was nobody there. He didn't speak. Wasn't doing anything. But now that I was looking for that gratification, it would have been nice, because I risked my life for him and everybody else. And on that day of the insurrection, he was one of the person who said on the Senate floor, I had enough. We had a hell of a ride. I cannot support this person any longer. And then later on, months later, they say, they quoted him saying, to the police officer who were around him during the insurrection, you have a gun, use it. And if you're not going to use it, then give it to me. This is somebody who clearly knows how dangerous the president was, and still continue to defend him. And he voted against the conviction of the former president on the impeachment.
Right. Also, let me compare a couple of things for perspective. Because I know you mentioned this in your testimony. So I was an activist when I was in the 80s, into the 90s. I'm familiar with a lot of groups that go to DC and hold their rallies and have their say. What was the most extreme thing you remember before January 6th that was like had you on the seat of your pants? Was there anything?
How does what now?
Was there any event before January 6th that, as a Capitol Guard, had you just nervous?
Not really. I mean, we deal with almost every day of the year. There's almost a demonstration, whether it's small, large, medium. It just happened that day, the person who sent the mob also had the ability to call off the mob and also send reinforcement to us. I know during Black Lives Matters, the whole Capitol, the whole Washington D.C. looked like a military zone, but like literally, as I mentioned in my book, American Shield, is it looked to me like part of the invasion where I took part in Iraq, in terms of the military high gear, the mutual support that we had in the area. We couldn't move on length. We would have tripped over each other because we had so much support. Because the rationale at that time was, let's project so much power that it would make them think twice to even try to do something around the Capitol. And on January 6th, it was just, oh shit, it's just Capitol Police, CDU, probably 400 people, officers, and then Metropolitan Police later on came to our rescue. And then nobody else for a long time, maybe an hour or two. Because even the idea or the optics of having to annoy Trump because somebody authorized mutual support in the area to defend the Capitol in broad daylight, where on a televised event, on a transfer of power, they deemed that it would have been not good optics to help the officer, to help the police, to send help from the military. I know later on I learned that Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, I learned that he deployed the National Guard and put it at the border of Washington, D.C. to be ready once the approval comes from either from the president, which he did not, or the Pentagon, which it was, by the time it was done, most of the fighting had happened and most of the officers were injured. And over 140 officers officially reported their injuries, but I know there were more. We are type A individuals. We normally trying to brush off our injuries and move on. Don't worry, I'll be good. I tried to do that for 2 days and it wasn't fun. And I went to the doctor on the 8th and it wasn't, I was going to be taken off policing for my surgery. I said, no, I still had to go back and defend the Capitol. I still had to go back and defend my colleagues. And I'll come back on the 20th after the ceremony, the inauguration, if anything, but I'm needed at the Capitol because all these people were saying there were a lot of reports and intelligence that these people would have come back with firearms, rifles and everything. As I mentioned in my book, all these things, a lot of people don't know. But we know, the officer, we know, the National Guard who deployed to the Capitol, they know because they got the same reports. And that's only part of it, what you guys are aware of that I'm mentioning now.
What has been the reaction in the officer groups that you're close to your testimony? How have you been received on there?
I don't know. I mean, I think there are some people that are supportive of what we have said and done. They continue to support us, but then there are others that clearly are annoyed by us telling the truth. By policing and police culture is always keep everything in house. Do not deviate from that. Our culture is, we deal with our own things internally. Nobody needs to know about what we've gone through or in the department itself. And for a while, it bothers me that I was not at work. Always looking at things from far away, even doing the after action reports and things like that. It bothered me that I was not there to tell them exactly what happened to me, how we could improve our security posture. But looking back, in a way, I'm glad that I was not there because now, after the third week of past January 6th, you have Kevin McCarthy flying to Mar-a-Lago because the fucking guy cannot eat. He's depressed. And in Mar-a-Lago, in a mansion, the rich guy who tried to kill him and his colleagues. And I guess he wanted to see for himself that this person was good to go. But now the Capitol Police or the people who defended him. So there are a lot of things that bothers me that I think had I been at the Capitol in the aftermath of January 6th and witnessing some of the things that the people who we protected, the people who we risked our lives for, would it make my life a little more uneasy? The mental health, the triggers, the moral injury that they were causing, because just like 3 weeks ago, the former president said, these people are hostages. Wait, I thought they were Antifa. So now they're hostages? And if they are hostages, then what that makes me? The sicario, the hostage taker, the sequester?
Yeah.
And
What are what are some of those narratives that bug you the most? I mean, I know a lot of people say things like, "Oh, just ignore it," but what are ones that when you hear it, you just want to say, what the fuck are you talking about? What gets to you?
I mean, I make fun of some of those people, because had it not be because what we did on January 6th, they wouldn't have been alive. And I remember the same day we testified in front of Congress, you had Marjorie Taylor Greene and a whole bunch of right-wing caucus of the Republican Party going in front of the Justice Department to ask for the same people who were hunting them down and their colleagues, and that beat us, the police officer, assaulted us, breached the Capitol, stop the transfer of power. They were asking for those people to be free and call them patriots. Well, if they were patriots, then what makes the police officer the bad guy of the story? Were we the bad guy? Donald Trump, I think yesterday, said that the officer who hit the rioter who was trying to breach the police line and the Capitol out of the tunnel, that he should be prosecuted. These are the people who say and fill their mouth with, we back this and support the police. We back the law and order. We are for the rule of law. And yet they are downplaying what happened. If it is between the mob attacking the Capitol, these are peaceful. If it is the border people, it's an invasion. You can't have it both ways.
Right.
You can't have it both ways. I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this. I think we were going to talk about doing it out. I want to ask you a question. Would you like to have some of the people who are listening be able to come ask you some questions?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, good. So we'll do that. And we'll keep it cool. No soliloquies, please. Time so we can get the best out of it. But I do have a question for you. So I wrote a paper back in the summer of 2020 about what I saw as the conflation of these different groups, and especially when Boogaloo Boys started showing up Black Lives Matters. And one of the things I said was in-group, out-group behavior in race in America changes in D.C., like you said about Black Lives Matter. So you pointed out that, for instance, when it was on immigration, it's like you have Greg Abbott wanting to throw like razor blades in the river, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the protection of the Capitol, there's one class that got treated very different. How does it feel to have to admit, or how does it feel for you to realize that America really has to admit it still has a racism problem about its extremism? And if there's one group that can basically enact in hardcore violence at the Capitol, and you know what I'm asking.
I mean, it's like I was telling you early, and I do cover some of these things in my book, American Shield. You have the Republican elected officials and a lot of people from the Republican side that always want to us, the police officers, or I'm a former now, but they want the police to enforce the law, and but only for certain people. They want to prosecute Black Lives Matters, but they don't want to prosecute the people on the mob on January 6th. And as one of the person was telling myself and Danny Hodges inside the tunnel, when the whole war hated you during 2020 in the Black Lives Matter demonstration, we back you up. We had your back. We supported you. And this is him telling us as they are beating us with the American flag inside the tunnel, as if our policing
Exactly.
was transactional. Their support was transactional in their fucking mind. That's how insane that is. At
Exactly.
least in my mind and in the way I did it, I didn't take preference on who you supported in order for me to enforce the laws. I applied them equally, and
That's right.
a lot of the political elected officials, especially from the Republican side, well, they did it, therefore we also should be allowed to, and or the law apply, but only to this person. Investigate Hunter
Right.
Biden, but not Jared Kushner and Ivanka and Donald Jr. and Eric Trump. But it's not the same. It's oranges and apples. But when it's the other side, no, they bund them up all together. It doesn't matter. We break in the laws and bend them however to our will, and nobody cares. And that's how
I agree with you.
Trump is back leading as a leading candidate, because there's nobody from that side that would stand up to defend the Constitution. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger did it, and they paid a heavy price for it. And they even those are the only two, by the way, that actually listened to myself, to Harry Dunn, to Hodges, in terms of from that side of the political spectrum. Anybody else, they would kind of dismiss it, indifferent. They say that they support the police, but they don't. That's a slogan that bumper sticker slogan that they use to bait support from that community. But and the sad truth is that many of them, they do fall into, because they do appear with pictures and things like that, to despite the contrary of what happened.
Exactly. So let's do this. I could see. Did you see how quickly y'all came up and wanted to talk to you? So that's why I'm yielding a whole bunch of questions.
And sorry about my long answers.
No,
too
it's
much
good.
to talk about.
And we have pure candor here, so you're free to speak at will.
Absolutely.
So I don't
Really
see the
good.
rotation, and that's why I have an awesome co-host. So where are we at?
Well, I'm going to go in order of when I saw hands go up. There are a few I didn't, so you're all on the honor system. Also, before we get started with the questions, I just want to make sure that everybody keeps their initial comments short, because we're going to have a lot of hands to go through and all of that, and we don't want to take too much time with it.
Yeah.
But if you could keep your questions focused on Staff Sergeant Gonell, that'd be great. And also, please don't be offended if I rotate you out, because I know we're going to be getting a lot more requests to come up. So
see, this is why I didn't have to say anything. I knew you would catch the rest of the script that I had in my head.
Yeah. I got
rotate
your back,
out,
Chris.
because we're going to basically get the hands through, but that's why we're going to open to the hands. So rotate out, and co-host
and then also,
prerogative.
Also, can I just mention, I put a lot of stuff up in the nest. There were some articles, podcasts, and of course, Staff Sergeant Gonell's book, which I encourage everybody to go and buy. It promises to be a great read, and post your picture when you get it. So all those things are up in the nest. But the first person
and review
to
it
raise
too.
his hand.
Exactly.
Yeah, review it. I know, right? Okay, I'll make that a point to do. Anyhow, let's start with Dave in California. Hi, Dave.
in California.
Well, hello, Snowden and Chris. Unfortunately, I can't hear Chris, but I'll keep it.
Do you want to rotate out and I'll bring you back?
Oh no!
He can ask. I can hear him.
Hopefully, he can hear me. If he can, it'll be a blessing. But Sergeant Gonell, as you know, I reached out to you quite a while ago when I heard your story. I don't really necessarily have a question, but I want you to hear it. That we appreciate and are grateful to you for your service to this country, for your service to the Capitol Police, for what you did that day. Don't think that people like me, all of us probably in this room, don't appreciate the horror that you went through, support you, if I saw Trump on the street, I'd probably go to jail after what he pulled on you guys. And that's honest to God, I can't stand him. So a lot of love in this room. I think you need to do more of these. People need to hear you. They need to hear your story, and I'm really grateful to NatSec and Snowden for having this space. And that's it, man. I want you to be well. I want to know emotionally you're well. If you just want to talk to a brother that's not a cop, I'm here, and we love you, man. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I just want you and everybody else to know that had it not be because of January 6th, nobody but my family and myself would have known what I had done for this country. 23 years of service, both in the military and also 17 as a police officer. We came forward because we wanted and we want accountability, not because we were seeking any gain or profits or accolades or awards. Right. I did those things in the military. I got my awards. I earned those things. If people want to give me those, great, but that's not going to give me back my career that I lost. It's not going to bring back my health and my peace of mind. I do appreciate the support. If you reach out to me in the past and I didn't, reach out to me again, to DM me on Twitter, and I'll try to get back to you. But what we did, it was short of a miracle, and we paid dearly for it with blood and sweat on that day.
Yeah,
thank you, Dave.
I'm sure a lot of people reiterate that sentiment. Thank you so much, Dave. Malarkey is actually next.
What's up, Malarkey?
Hi, how are you guys? Thanks for having this space. Sergeant Gonell, Dave stole basically what I was going to say. I don't have a question at all. I really just wanted to say that, I thank you for your service in the Army, of course, and, also on January 6th. And, I remember watching the hearings, and maybe I even heard you the first time that you testified in front of Congress. And I remember you saying that, in all of your time in combat, that you'd never even seen anything like you saw on January 6th. And, I remember like us watching that day and how horrible it was for us, even like me thinking about watching it now, like how difficult that is. And so I can't even imagine what that's like for you. And so I just really wanted to thank you, for defending not only, our Capitol building and, the citadel of our democracy, and our lawmakers, even the ones that didn't deserve it. But, I just want you to know, and your fellow officers to know, I hope that you remember that there are so many more of us who appreciate you and thank you every day, because you really did save our democracy. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And one thing that I wanted you to know is that regardless of how people see me or the other officers, whether villains or heroes, we simply did our job. We simply were trying to protect and keep our oath. What we signed up for. We didn't sign up for an insurrection, but yet we found one. We find ourselves in the middle of one, and we did our best to keep everybody safe, including those elected officials who now are espousing and parodying the same things that the former president says. Appreciate your support. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a real quick. First off, thank you, Malarkey. You've covered this topic quite a bit. So actually, let me also say, a lot of the people who are listening to you right now, I'm going to use the big O word, they obsess with this topic in a way that few people will. And like patriots, they're really interested in accountability. So I do have a question before we get to the next one, which is that have you had any lawmakers who before January 6th were in one situation with their opinions and since then have come to you and go, you know what, man, I was really wrong and I'm sorry?
Not really. Like I said, the only two Republicans that I spoken to at length with what happened on January 6th, with my experience at least, had been Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, and that was for the January 6th committee. Occasionally, I text Adam Kinzinger once in a while, and he respond back, but nobody else reached out to me. It was again, I was devastated. I was injured at home. It was just myself, my wife, my son, and my dog, and everybody else kept moving. It was hard for me to be dealing with not only with my physical injuries, but the trauma and also the moral injuries. Like I said, when I do the right thing, there are many people that said, "No, you didn't. You didn't do it," and those are the loudest voices. What else am I supposed to believe? Why did I risk my life for if that was not worth it? You telling me or they telling me that what I did was not enough? What I lived through was my own doing, my own imagination, and yet I had my health taken away. My income has been diminished. My tranquility, my peace, my health, all these things are combined. And not only that, my beliefs in the American system and principles and values cradle as well as a result of that. Because just like 9/11 happened or World War II with a Pearl Harbor attack, I expected the country to rally and come together. And yet, 2 weeks later, Kevin McCarthy decided to revive this person because he was depressed and couldn't eat. I don't know.
It does boggle the mind.
I have overcome a lot of things. And I continue to. Whether the people say that there are some people now that because of the release of the speaker, the new speaker of the House, and the former one, they had released some of the footages about January 6th selectively and to a certain right-wing platforms. They don't release it to the public in general. They only release it to Tucker Carlson and all the other people that are cherry picking some section of the video, the whole long day, because my day was long. I got to the Capitol at 6 a.m. and I didn't go home until 4 a.m. I got home on January 7th to come back on the 8th, on the 7th at 8 o'clock in the morning for another 16 hours.
Yeah.
And that's despite my injuries. And yet they say, well, on this video, you look like you're not limping enough. Well, which one do you want me to worry about, my injuries or the person that I'm trying to save a life? And then if I don't try to save that person's life, then you say, well, look at that cop. He's neglecting his duty. He let her die. Those are the things that people attack us for. Not that, okay, on this video, they seem peaceful. Okay, at what time of the day was that? Or what part of the Capitol was that?
Right.
Because where I was, it was 4 hours plus where we were battling for our lives and preventing people from coming into the Capitol.
Oh, well, thank you so much for putting this space up tonight. And you don't know how honored I am to talk to you and tell you how proud I am of you. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm a January 6th defendant. They called me Mega Granny, but I'm ex-Mega Granny. And I wrote a letter to Congress. I was hoping someday to get there. Do you mind, Chris and Stoddard, if I read a quick paragraph that we
Actually, can we do it? Let's do it this way, if you don't mind. Instead of the paragraph, would you like to issue an apology for your participation to the officer that's here in front of us?
Oh, absolutely. I went there like a lot of people, just thinking you're going to a rally. But that's why I pleaded guilty, because I was guilty. I could have left. I am so sorry for what the Capitol Police have had to go through. It is not your fault.
And Sergeant, what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you for realizing that you made a mistake. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I got disconnected.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah, the whole thing crashed.
Oh.
But we're gonna go through the hands, and so but I didn't get a chance to hear you respond. So, in fact, I heard about 3 words. So Pam Hemphill was 70-year-old granny that went out in the crowd and was involved, and she offered you that comment, and you were making a comment back. Would you like to just finish that comment, and then we'll go to the next questions?
I mean, people went to the Capitol on that day for whatever reason. I know they say that they got cut up or whatever the case is. We were doing our job, and if what they need to realize is, if this was their own house, which to me the Capitol was my house, a place where I spent 17 years of my life. If all these things that were happening in the Capitol happened at their house, would they want any type of accountability? And I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. And the people who did the assault, the people who did the violence, they will want them to be sent to jail. I do accept the apology. I'm glad that she's repentant, she's remorseful, she took responsibility. But there are other people who haven't taken responsibility and continue to even make their platform to become the president again, just on that faithful date. A lot of people tell us, the officers who testify, oh, you're just seeking attention, or you need to move on. Okay, well, tell that to the former guy who's running a candidacy just on that day alone. Last week, I think he did the pledge of the January 6th anthem, and call those people hostages. Again, what is the agenda to make your life better? Nothing.
Exactly.
It's just about him. So I do take I'm glad that she recognized that she made a mistake. I hope everybody else do the same thing, but it have to be realistic too.
Can I ask a real quick question about that too? I mean, have any other January 3rd or January 6th defendants or people who were there, have any others apologized to you or reached out to you in any way?
The guy Mayor or Ayer, on one of the January 6th committee hearing, he apologized. But then again, you have the optics and looking for leniency and all this stuff. I get it. I did my job, and that's what matters to me. Whether they see me as a villain or hero, then I'll let you guys in the history books decide too. I sacrificed a lot for this country, both in the military and as a police officer. There was one person, I think, either Fitzsimmons or I think it was Fitzsimmons, and it got me a little emotional, not because of what he did to me, but because I know he had a little kid, and that kind of like looking back, my son, and thinking about my son, I'm like, here are 2 lives ruined because this fucking guy, the former president, and doesn't care how many lives he ruined. All he cares is about staying out of jail, and that's what got me a little bit emotional. But he did apologize. I think it was, I felt that it was sincere. He even mentioned that he was sorry about taking my job, my career, and that he was happy or grateful that I did not use lethal force, because during trial, I did mention that I was in the few seconds away from transitioning to use my lethal force on him.
Next on my list was Slick Rock Eric. Hi.
Slick Rock Eric. Hi, Slick Rock Eric.
Hi, Snowden and Chris, and it's an honor to speak to you, Staff Sergeant Gonell. I apologize, I got a little bit of a cold, so I'll see if my voice will hold out here. But first off, thank you for your service and really for protecting democracy. I had a couple quick questions that are, I guess, probably a little bit related. One was, at the time, it sounded like there was some rumors, and just from like looking at a lot of the January 6th footage, among a lot of the sedition hunters, we kind of looked at a lot of footage. There were rumors that there were difficulties for you guys to get access to equipment, and there was a lot of officers that seemed like they didn't have gas masks, and then also rumors of communication breakdowns, or like communications weren't working the way you guys expected. I was just curious if you experienced any of that, or if any of that was true, or if that was just rumors.
One thing that people need to understand is that not every police officer from Capitol Police was trained for civil disturbance response. At that time, we were roughly 400 members. Some of them, everybody that was available to work was there at work. The other thing that you have to take into consideration is we're in the middle of the pandemic, and there were people with COVID symptoms following the protocols from CDC, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or 2 weeks separation for mitigating the COVID. So whoever was available that day was there at the Capitol, including people who were not part of the CDU response. Unfortunately, if you were not in the CDU civil disturbance unit, you were not getting, you did not, you were not issued a shield or a helmet, because we know normally we don't expect or imagine that we will be attacked by this amount of people all at once around the Capitol, besieging and the Capitol that way they did. What was your second question, sir?
About some of the communications breakdowns, or at least that was the rumor. I don't know if that was true or not.
In terms of the communication, I mean, I used the radio to my handheld radio to court to call for reinforcement a couple of times, but I wasn't listening to the radio. There was no point of me trying to keep a cord around my neck where somebody earlier tried to use it and almost choked me with it. Why would I keep it there? So I let it dangle most of my time in the West Front, including my time in the tunnel, and only use it or reach for it when I needed to call for reinforcement. And I did that, I believe, 3 or 4 times, if I'm not mistaken. In terms of some of the officers having their equipment storage somewhere else, I was not aware on that day, but subsequently I learned that they were placed near where they were supposed to be a station or their area of responsibility. Again, what we did not anticipate was that the person sitting at the White House or actually giving a speech at their lips on that day was sending the mob and the crowd to the Capitol. And then once the violence became evidence that preponderant that he would not call off the siege, he would not use his influence to call back the mob and say, you know what, this is not what I had in mind. We need to stop this. We need to leave the Capitol, stop attacking the Capitol. By the time he actually did that, it was 2 hours later, and the fighting already had been happening. I was one of the officers who already had been injured, and then that's when the fierce fighting began to happen inside the tunnel, where Officer Hodges began trapped in between the boyfriend, the mob, and the police officer, including myself, who was right next to him as well. Then, roughly about an hour and a half later, Fitzsimmons grabbed me and tried to take me into the crowd, just like they already had done to Michael Fanone after he relieved me. Unfortunately, I didn't know at that time, like I mentioned in my book, American Shield, is I met these two gentlemen, Hodges and Fanone, and including Harry, throughout my day. I didn't know, except for Harry, I didn't know their names. I didn't know who they were. And over the course of my own investigation, over the course of giving testimony to court and some interviews, I learned that these were the people that I actually came to my rescue. These are the people who I was right next to. And you could see that in our testimony in front of Congress. We all had, we testified, we gave our testimony, but we didn't coordinate with each other because I didn't know who they were. We didn't, and we know that we tried to get to know each other. We just happened to have a different experience of that horrible day.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So
Let's go
go ahead,
Let's make sure we
Owen.
went through the.
Yeah, you're in
Let's
the
make sure we
order.
went through the.
He's in the
Thank
order.
you so much.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I was just going to say that, like in the tunnel, that sounds absolutely awful. And I got kind of chills when you were speaking about it. But like, I was interested, like how you feel about, like, you know, the Speaker of the House releasing footage like it's some kind of gotcha moment where we all saw the same thing. You experienced it, you know, like, I'm just kind of wondering about how you, what that's like. I mean,
It's
you
on,
said.
it's selectively cherry picking some of the footages. What he's not showing is either the former speaker, Kevin McCarthy, and the new speaker, Mike Johnson. What they don't do is show how we, the police officer, saved their asses, how we evacuated them to safety, how we protected them on January 6th. Near the tunnel where the fiercest fighting was happening, that's where most of the safe areas are for them, for refuge. And they couldn't have gotten to those areas had it not be because we hold them off in that area, in the tunnel. And at that time, myself included, I believe that most of the officers, the 30 to 40 officers who were initially defending that area, that entrance, we thought that was it, that was the main breach of the Capitol, that nobody else around the Capitol was getting in through the Capitol. We never expected that they were going to breach the windows and the doors. It was just that entrance, and we did everything within our power, and we did succeed. Nobody that we did not allow. I believe it was two rioters that we let in, and it was because of medical reasons. And after that, because they continue, we continue to take casualties. Somehow we let them go. We didn't have the manpower to arrest them. We didn't have nowhere to put them. We did not have nobody to come get them. We needed our help ourselves. And one of them said that I believe he was faking having an asthma attack. A guy with a red jacket, bald-headed white guy. He claimed, I can't breathe. I can't move. So he launched himself through a door. We pulled him up and we took him to the back for medical reason. And then we tried to research him. We did a couple of things with him. But later on, I find out months after January 6th that he passed away because of COVID. And you couldn't imagine how devastated I was when I found out that he had passed away before being held accountable through the justice system.
Wow.
You know, I was devastated, you know, being sarcastic. But, you know, everybody else that say that we let those people in, they were not the tunnel, because even the rioters themselves who were in the tunnel they'll tell you that they felt like they were dying, and that's exactly how we were feeling. We took, I think, two breaks in between that were, if you look at the footage, you see both the riders and ourselves like exhausted, and I'm like kind of like looking at each other like, what the fuck are we doing here? And here comes a new group of fresh riders and come to the front, and the officer, we couldn't do that, we couldn't rotate, and all I had to say to myself like, oh, fuck, here we go again with my shield,
Right.
in front of me, and holding our post, holding our position, and inch by inch, just to move 1 foot. That was like half an hour struggle. And people do need to realize that
Jeez.
that was brutal for us. We almost died there. And a lot of people who were there, if they were inside the tunnel, if they say that didn't feel like they were dying, they full of shit. Can
Okay,
we
great.
can we get the question from Bigfoot, please? I think he's a friend of mine, and he might have a question.
Oh, sure.
Let's do that.
Yeah, he was actually after the next person, but go ahead. And then the order will be Shovel, Mud Puppy, Joanne, and Joel after that. So go ahead, Bigfoot.
And Capital Hunters too, if they have a question for me. I don't know.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi,
Finally.
Gonell. Yeah, nice to meet you with voice. We've talked a few times, and it's just been really good to hear from you. My question is, you've helped save democracy. You've written a book and published a book. But what's next for you? Do you have future plans? What have you been thinking of doing in the next few years?
Well, I'll tell you that not running for office, despite all people asking me to. I think running for office, at least in the immediate future, require you almost selling your soul to certain people or interests. And I had too much pride and also too much morality to compromise. I had, since January 6th, I have made a lot of progress in terms of my mental health and my physical injuries. One thing that in the future, I would like to do is use that experience of how I dealt with my PTSD using basketball to heal my body and my mind, just like I did with my injuries from fatigue from Iraq. I use basketball as a way to cope with my trauma. I'm glad that I'm able to do some of the activities like I used to do before, just not as aggressive as I used to. But my doctors have cleared me from doing those things, and I want to down the road probably build on that progress, and also build a community center where I could teach other people how to play basketball, coach them, and have a safe place not only for kids, but anybody else that with different programs that will be geared to providing services towards mental health. And that's something that in the near future I'll probably reach out to all of you guys to help me support that venture, because as you know, I'm not a police officer anymore, and I need to down the road find a way for me to make an income. But that alone was not going to be just a way for me to get an income, but also to continue my service, to continue serving my community in a positive way.
Anyway, Shovel, your turn.
Hi, everybody, and hello, Staff Sergeant Gonell. I'm feeling kind of emotional today. This is a group of people, we usually speak together. I think we reflect a lot on how important and valuable democracy is for everyone. And just like everyone else, I really want to give you my sincere thanks to you, your family, your fellow officers. It makes me sick. I was looking at some of the disgusting comments that people were leaving under some of your tweets, and I just want to inform you, go ahead and you can block liberally. That's something some of us have had to do. and there's no shame in that. You don't need that. You don't deserve that. But so I can sense your frustration, and I mean, after what you lived through, and I gotta say, a lot of us feel betrayed as well. I think it still hurts and resonates, that so many of our fellow citizens would have betrayed us like that. Most especially the freaking president. The biggest, most treasonous act of all. But I wanted to say, you're so humble and honorable, but I don't know, have you ever considered the fact, I mean, you guys literally saved America. Like, do you ever think what would have happened if you hadn't been able to stop them? Like, I just thought about this now, like I don't think I dared to let myself before.
So what would have happened if things had gone the other way?
I mean, what would happen? I mean, most of the same people who are parroting what the big lie the former president says, and including the Speaker of the House, that nothing happened. Remember, it was Antifa, or nothing happened. Now these people are innocent because they're not Antifa. Well, okay, you can't have it both ways. And I think what happened, one thing I'm going to share with you is on January 7th, when I woke up and I was injured, and my wife saw me limping around with my arm and hand still swollen and bleeding a little bit, she thought I was going to the hospital, to the emergency room. And she got pissed when I told her, no, I'm going to work. I'm needed at work. Help me pack my lunch. And she begrudgingly did that. She helped me, but she was pissed. And she was like, I can't believe you still have to go back, especially so soon, 2 hours later. I only got probably like 2 hours and a half of sleep. And I do cover this in the book. So if you can, please help me support. That moment, we didn't talk about it until that moment, until last year. For some reason, that conversation came back again, and I asked her, did you ever wonder why I went to work? And she said, no, I'm still upset at you because I wanted to take care of you. I'm like, you were trying to take care of me. I was trying to secure your future. Not only my future, my son's future, the country future, our democracy future. And if that entailed, in my mind, my rationale at that moment was, if that entailed me sacrificing my life once again, putting it on the line to protect everything that I held dear, then that would have been worth it. Tomorrow, she's going to be able to raise her hand and become a U.S. citizen.
That's incredible.
Had I not done that, God knows whether she would have been able to do that tomorrow. To me, it's a sacrifice that I did that day. And if people, again, whether they criticize me for stopping the mob, for doing my job, whether they think that I'm partisan, remove Trump name out of the equation and think, will you be okay with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden doing the same thing coming January 2025? If the answer is no, then stop bickering about what the job we did, because we did our job. We kept our oath regardless who was in office, regardless who we were protecting inside. We were just doing our job.
Amen.
And if they had any sense of duty, every sense of devotion, they would not be criticizing the officers or ridiculing the officer who had spoken out. Because what we want people to know is that it was horrible and it should not be repeated ever again.
Snowden, who do we have next?
Sorry, I'm speaking to a muted mic.
Oh,
I
it's okay.
believe
I do
it's
it.
actually Mud Puppy.
What's up, Mud Puppy?
Mud Puppy is next. Go ahead.
What's up? Gosh, I really didn't think that I was going to get this emotional, but I do. What a sad, depressing time in our lives. I mean, really, thank you so much. You really saved this country. And I don't want anybody to ever tell you otherwise, because you're going down in the fucking history books as a goddamn patriot of this country. Apologies.
Oh.
I actually just wanted to know, well, I had two questions, and if I don't get, one of them in, apologies, but was there anything from the January 6th hearings that we all saw publicly that you think was not covered or that the public should know about?
The involvement of some of the people who I protected and risked my life for, including Jim Jordan, who is a material witness on the events of what happened on January 6th. Same thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, they have meetings at the White House where there's a video of her coming out of the meeting. We have plans for January 6th tomorrow for stopping the steal and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you were planning this whole thing, and yet you're hiding behind the legislative position that you hold. The same thing, there are other people who had information about January 6th. That's why they continue to evade the subpoenas and not speaking out about January 6th. And when they do, they deflect and project what other people they say, or they want people to believe that did happen. But when they say that, is the only thing that they're doing is projecting what we already know, that they were involved. Just like when they say, well, Sergeant Gonell and the other officer and the people from January 6th, committee members, they all need to be investigated. By all means, do it. I have my conscience clear. I had the videos and the footage of what I did, what I defended, the action that I took. I'm able to account for those things. What they don't account is of their own action, how they're hiding behind the position and to hide and evade their responsibility to protect and defend the Constitution, not the president, the former guy.
That's right. And before we go to the next question, since we've had convictions, notable convictions no less, of Stuart Rhodes and Enrique Terrio, how do you feel that at least those two particular kingpin and a handful of their associates were definitely hit hard?
I think, in my opinion, that I'm glad that through the course of the justice system they were found guilty. We saw what happened. I mean, you guys saw what happened. We lived it, and it wasn't easy. And if I was the one doing those things as an immigrant, even whether I was naturalized or not, I would have been booked the January 7th.
But especially the fact that they were so far, they stood outside the Capitol, a particular cowardice in their actions where they have no problem sending a horde, and that is the proper terminology, to attack you while they stood outside. So let's go through the hands, but I think that that's one of the things that bugged me from the very get-go was that Alex Jones and everyone stands outside whether minions go attack you.
I mean, but that's the thing. Like, all these people, including the former president, they allegedly they wanted to be at the Capitol and join the mob. What the fuck they were going to do? I mean, when you had the former president one day at the White House, they turned off the light and he's like relaxing when the light went off, and come back on. He's like in fear for his life, hugging himself. You know, these are people who haven't done anything for other people. They're not selfless. They will never do anything of the things that myself and my colleagues did. They will never amount to any of those things. So I don't get it what they were trying to do on that day. So.
Okay, next we have Joanna. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Joanna.
Hey, Snowden. Hi, Chris. I'm going to just join the chorus of thanking you and Officers Dunn and Hodges, who I know were here earlier. Maybe we'll listen later, for not just your service on that day and putting yourselves physically on the line, but for acknowledging the moral injury and the PTSD symptoms you've acknowledged, because it's a second level of service that you're doing that, especially such men that traditionally are in protector positions who, you know, sometimes there's a lot of pressure not to show those feelings. And you've all been so open with us, and that has been, for all of us, I think, very healing, because that day still, I didn't expect it either when I heard you to be so moved. And you know, I remember Officer Hodges being squashed, you know, and we were watching every bit of it from home, you know. I wanted to make a couple of points and ask a question. One is has to do with the way that, you know, I think Owen was talking about earlier, about the way that it's been framed, watching people walk around like tourists in the Capitol. In my former life, I used to manage very, very large nightclubs, so we did a lot of crowd control. And the level of hand-to-hand combat you all were doing in that tunnel is A, exhausting, and B, brutal. Okay, there's that. And the thing, I don't think that these other people that are saying, oh, there were people wandering around and they were just innocent tourists taking pictures, is that every single person that showed up in that place was acting as a distraction, was acting as another thing that had to be covered by y'all in order to keep the Capitol safe, but also to keep them safe, because that's your job. So even if people say, you know, oh, they were just wandering around or they didn't know what they were doing, the responsibility is on every single person in there for the violence that occurred in the tunnels, for every single harmed, every officer. And I think it's really important that that we all acknowledge that and understand that, because it doesn't matter if somebody was walking around, you know, with flowers in their hand. They still had to have a body on them to keep everything safe. Well, and de-escalation is key. So I just wanted...
One thing that I tell people when they do say that, okay, my bad, I cut up in the moment, whatever the dumbass excuse they use is, if you are seeing that there's a fight or there's a fire ahead of you, and then the closer you get to the fire or the fight, you start getting burned or getting hit. Oh, gee, I guess there was a fire. I guess it was a fight. Well, how dumb do you need to be to know or to find out that way that it was a fire or there was a fight? Because by the time you realize that you see the fighting and the closer you get to it, you should be realizing, oh, maybe I should leave now before things get out of hand. And a lot of those people decided to get closer, and it wasn't a lack of opportunity that they didn't engage in the fight. It was because they didn't get a chance. It was because we repel their assault, because we didn't allow them to go through the tunnel that they didn't go in. It wasn't because they were not trying to, and people need to realize that it wasn't a lack of trying that a lot of things worse did not happen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joanna. And the next is Joel. Hi, Joel.
G'day, Chris. G'day, Snowden. Hello from down under, as they say. Staff Sergeant Gonell, I just want to say personally, I appreciate everything you did and the Capitol Police did and everyone did. It was horrific watching that from Melbourne, Australia. It was horrific for the entire world to see how close things can go to absolute chaos. But some of the things that you've said are interesting to me from a regulatory and legal perspective. In terms of training, two questions, I guess. In terms of training and equipping the police force to handle insurrection type events in future, should they occur, or now that there's a defined possibility of them occurring, will that be undertaken by the Capitol Police? And obviously, you did the best you absolutely could, but there were a number of issues with that you couldn't control. And the second question is, legislatively and regulatorily, do you feel that there may be moves towards tightening regulations around who can access public buildings? And is this a positive or a negative outcome? I'm sure they're not on the cards due to the current Congress, but at some point in time, I assume these will be tightened up and people will have less access to their public buildings because of what these people have done. So those are my two questions.
I mean, to answer your first question, there have been changes within the Capitol before I left. I mean, obviously, it's actually going to be in a couple of days. It's going to be a year since I left, so I cannot speak to all the changes that happened since I left or before. But there were things that I cannot disclose that I know they say they fix, that they remediate them, or they improve. However, I'm not there to corroborate that, and I just hope and pray that if there is a next time, or those same issues that fell the last time, that they don't happen again. In terms of restricting the area, doesn't seem like a good idea to not only to the Capitol Police Board, but also to some of the very same members of Congress who are elected officials that we protect every day. I mean, one thing that in our country we are proud of is that anybody have access to these elected officials. Is open area, and that's what we are there as a police officer, is there to provide them that environment of free of threats and danger, whether that danger is coming from or emanating from some of the members themselves.
But let's get to a rotation of heads. We had some people up. If anyone had not spoken and had questions, let's go ahead and get those through there, and then we'll say goodbye for the evening. But let's and thank you for your time and your. It's equally interesting for the audience to talk to you as I think it is therapeutic for you to hear these people who care.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Like I said before, I mean, we didn't do this because we won accolades or anything. Like we were just simply doing our job, at least in my part. And I had consistently stated that,
exactly,
whether people want to take the time and say thank you, I welcome it. But whether they say that we didn't do anything, or it shouldn't have, or talk to the guy who did that and send those people over. Then we have a conversation about that.
Joanna, were you done with your question by the time we crashed? I don't remember.
I actually was. I did already have my turn, but I did want to sneak in here just because it's so important for me that Staff Sergeant Gonell knows that those people that troll you are the minority. The majority of this country supports you and sees you as a hero. And the only way that they've been able to convince anybody otherwise is through the use of a lot of megaphones and loud voices. But the majority of the country I know knows that you're a true patriot, and we all owe you a debt of thanks we could never repay. I just wanted to say that real quick.
Appreciate
So
it.
that's
I
it.
appreciate it, and it means a lot because, again, just like you said, sometimes what we hear is the loudest voices. I just hope that people actually do take a moment and see what we did, despite the odds, despite the adversity that we needed to overcome. And when people say that nothing happened at the Capitol, well, nothing happened to who? The elected official who ran to the safe area with the help that in time that we provided them, or us, the police officer who sustained multiple injuries and continue to defend those same people who said nothing happened, despite that, despite the trigger and the moral and mental health injuries that they continue to trigger.
Hallelujah, go ahead. It's all yours.
All right. Staff Sergeant Gonell, I want to give a lot of respect to you, sir. I know y'all. I was watching the video in that hallway when they was like crushing the officers, and I'm like, damn, bro, them dudes got families. They try like you could tell from my dialect I'm a street dude a little bit or whatever, right? And our thing when we leave out of the house, we all got families, all of that shit, is to come home the same way we left, bro. That's
Exactly.
you know what I'm saying? Or that, like, across the board, I don't care if you the most clean cut person in the world or you out here thugging. That's the goal at the end of the day, is to come home the way you left. Your family see you leave away, they expect you to come home so anyway, you make me proud to hold this space that I hold called the J6 Cryathon. And it was just a joke until now, but I'm very proud to do it now. You know what I'm saying? Because it wasn't. It's really us just trolling them, and nobody like. It's people that go back and forth with them or whatever, but it's nobody really attacking them like that. You know what I'm saying? So we lit the J6's call. We had from the J6's call from the DC jail to this guy, the general space, and we stream that space and make fun of them. And just so you know, them dudes is not doing good at all in that jail, bro. They getting robbed. They in there crying, and we laughing every Thursday to they fucking pain. And we gonna do that in your honor for the rest of the year. The shows is gonna be dedicated to Staff Sergeant Gonell. That's how that's going down. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I
Much love
appreciate
to you, brother. Much love to you.
I appreciate it. I mean, I know, I understand that they're going through, J6 people, they're going through things, but guess what? They chose to do certain things to the officers and to the Capitol and to our nation that nowhere in our lifetime we imagined that they would do, especially to a police officer and, in full uniform getting attacked like that by the thousands of people.
And I mean,
They
there was
they
people in the
they they
crowd that.
chose they chose to do those things, and when they say,
Well,
and when the former president and all the people from elected officials say, well, these are people who are unjustly being persecuted,
Nah.
or I'm like, well, if they don't want to be prosecuted, then stop committing crime. Don't do the crime.
Well, and here's where I'm going to get to the question I put on the hold earlier. So there's one particular person that got treated like a martyr more than anybody. And one of the things I pointed out to her, and I'm pretty consistent about this, is that Ashley Babbitt served in what was known as the Capitol Guards. She served in the National Guard, who was tasked to cover the Capitol. So of all the people that crawled through a fucking window that day, she understood what the consequences would be. So my question is more this, though. Reflect on what it does to the officer who has to make that decision, because you just said that you had to go through a decision where you're just seconds away from making a different decision. What does that feel like?
The irony of that is that Ashley Bobbitt, she went to the academy in the art. I think no, I'm sorry. She went to war with a friend of mine, this is how small the war is. A friend of mine, brother, went to war with her, and I think it was I don't know what she served, but they did tell me that they went. They even showed me a picture with her. This is the same person who swore off to protect and defend the Capitol, and yet here you are breaching the Capitol, getting to that spot where you get shot after breaching.
That's right.
After breaching the Capitol, layer after layer, including disobeying lawful order by the police, and then the only reason why she probably got shot was she listened to herself. She didn't care about anything else but pleasing Donald Trump and doing whatever fuck Donald Trump told her to. And how did she stay away from the Capitol? January 6th wouldn't happen, at least on her part. She would not have been taking part in this insurrection. When she actually got shot, if you look at the video and the footage being past the glass, you could still see some of the elected officials still being evacuated,
Exactly.
rushed out of the chamber because they are trying to breach the Capitol chamber, the House chamber, the House.
And
The House of
what do
Representatives.
officers?
And what is the officer
Yeah.
supposed to do when there's a threat and they are in charge of protecting somebody? If I'm in charge of protecting your house and you are by the kitchen trying to leave that area to another house, to another building, and then you hear the shot coming in because they're breaching the Capitol, what is this officer supposed to do if he's protecting you and your family? What is he supposed to do? Let them go through, whether they have a background in military, whether they are police officers, whether they are a kid, a senior person or whatnot. They don't care. They didn't care about their service. And I'm talking about the mob. They didn't care who they were on January 6th. They had the mob behind them. They had the numbers to support them. We were a number. We were a match. We were at a disadvantage. And we were trying to do our job. Our job, keeping those elected officials who we were in charge and authorized to defend and protect. If you don't see that as a way to actually rationalize what happened, then I don't know what to tell you, because if that was inside your house, you would want that officer to take that shot and protect you and your family.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm concerned about is people forget what it does to the officers. So, Cece, do you have your hand up? And actually, let's rotate through the hands, and then we'll say some final bits.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
hi. I
Cece.
just sticky mic before, so I couldn't make it work in time. So thank you so much for coming here. I was wondering. So I come from a family of veterans, and I was just wondering. Mental health and support is so crucial in so many ways. I'm hoping that you guys have each other and maybe a support group or two, or that our government paid for psychologist support. It's not really my question because I feel like it's a personal thing and you don't need to answer, but I just wanted to express that I hope that's going on. But my question is, sorry if you answered this before and I came in second half, but have they changed the rules where now the military, it's what we were all wondering while biting our nails and pacing that whole time, was have they changed the rules where the military will now come in regardless in a situation like this again?
I believe they have some type of procedures. I was assured that they had people on standby. I don't know how fast they will get them together, whatnot. Given the separation of time, and how we American we have a short term span of attention. So I don't know. I know that the most difficult thing that as I look back, and when I was just realizing the magnitude of what happened, when the police officers were police line was being breached and the officers were getting beat up, including myself. And then later on, inside the tunnel, I come to realize to ask that same question: where the fuck is the president? Where the fuck is the military? And I covered this in my book, In the Tunnel, American Shield, when I was in the tunnel. And again, when I said earlier that one thing that we fail to imagine is the president sending the mob to the Capitol, attack a branch of his own government to remain in power. The other thing we never imagined was that the person that is able to authorize some of the reinforcement and the cavalry, as we try to rationale sometime, is the president, the person who was the commander-in-chief, the person who had the authority to send the National Guard, authorizing the use of the National Guard, was the same person who wanted the insurrection to happen in the first place. So how can we expect him to stop the mob when he wants the mob to do what his bidding on his behalf? I don't know. I think from what I'm understanding and from some of the evidence that was uncovered for the January 6th committee was that people at the Pentagon didn't want to, especially I think with Michael Flynn's brother or Christopher, somebody Miller at the Pentagon, they did not authorize the support that we needed because the optics. And how can a attack on the Capitol in broad daylight, where there's fighting, when there's an insurrection going on, and nobody else wants to do anything to help us restore order until 4 hours, 6 hours later? Can you try and see? I don't know if Corey, Colin, and Nefarious, or any people from the online sleuths, I don't know if they have any questions for me. I know these people are very supportive of me and they have helped me tremendously. So if they have any question, by all means, get them first.
You mentioned Corey is up. Who was the other one that you mentioned?
MAGA Red, Capital Hunter was earlier.
I saw.
Nefarious,
I don't see them anymore.
Nefarious something, I forgot. It doesn't show, but they know.
Nefarious Dave?
Yeah, so if they have any question, I don't know, give them preference too.
I'll be back. Go ahead, Corey. Hi, nice to see you.
Hey, how's it going? Staff Sergeant Gonell, thank you so much. Really, just cannot say it enough. Thank you. I'll try to make it quick. I was actually really just curious from the perspective of like how everything was planned and the awareness of what was going to happen that day. Was there any known coordination with like Capitol Police from Trump's side saying that he was going to send everybody from the ellipse to the Capitol, or was that something that just blindsided everybody that day?
I think it blindsided everybody. I know when I remember being in the north entrance of the Capitol Visitor Center. I was listening to some of his speeches, and especially when Rudy Giuliani said we're going to have a trial by combat, and then Ron Johnson also said something along those lines. Then I'm like, oh fuck, let's start getting ready because all these people, they're going to be coming this way now. And that was kind of like where the back of my hair were raised. I know some of the intelligence dissemination would never came down to my level or the above me to certain people. Unless there were many indicators that things were going to happen, not to my knowledge at that time, but subsequently I learned there were a lot of indicators that could have raised the alarm bells for not only for the Capitol, but even for the people who were organizing some of these things. It's just unfortunate that those people that had the knowledge of what was going to happen, or the planning and the orchestration of what happened, what would be happening on January 6th, they remain silent, including the former vice president, because he didn't chose to be brave days before January 6th. He chose to be brave just on that particular moment when he needed to certify the election. He knew what was planned. He is a material witness, in my opinion. And he could have used his platform, whether in front of the camera or a tweet, or just go and talk to the police and say, you know what, this is what this guy, my boss, wants me to do. Can you guys up the ante and reinforce the Capitol? Do this, do that. And he chose to remain silent. And it bothers me that sometimes he used in the past the term of people need to move on from that day, or that one day in January, or the president, what he did on January 6th was not criminal. He just was being reckless. Well, did you want it really to find out how reckless he wanted to be with your life, with your wife, with your kid, in the nuclear codes inside the Capitol that day, where they call for hang my pens? Not hang with my pens, hang them. And this is the same person who doesn't have the backbone to come clean and tell the American people what happened. And I'm glad that he lost his candidacy because he had no backbone.
And thank you, Corey.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And let me say also to Corey and others, for those citizens who stepped forward and did all that work, I want to also join the sergeant to say thank you. So I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that you guys get to connect.
Indeed, and I'm very appreciative of the online SLU community. I acknowledge them in my book, American Shield, as well. Big shout out to you guys, because you guys have helped me one way or the other to feel some type of justice happen to me, accountability. I know I had reached out to you guys in the past, and you have been very responsive. I think there's another project that Bigfoot is working on it, along with somebody else that I had gotten to know, and it's putting together some of the footages and things that I did on January 6th, kind of like in video clips. But that way, when some of these horrible people say, well, nothing happened, something else lying or whatnot, well, the people will be able to see that what I did on that day, it was, I was all over, but yet I was doing my best to help and secure the Capitol on that day. Thank you, you guys.
Yeah, they did some amazing work. Sensei, your hand is not up anymore, and I know that you had a question initially, or it was up before. Did you
It was up before.
Then...
It goes down when I came in very briefly to say that CC was ahead of me in line, and so that's why it went down. My apologies.
Go ahead.
It's wonderful to speak to you, Staff Sergeant. I do have a comment, not so much a question, but I want to say to you very clearly that the actions of the Capitol Police on that day were masterful, absolutely masterful. And I know you went through hell, and I appreciate that. I know it very well myself. Sensei isn't just a persona, it's actually my title. I know a lot about hand-to-hand combat.
Okay.
And I want to say to you that I think the Capitol Police did an amazing job at preventing an even greater tragedy in terms of bloodshed. You guys were absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I mean, whether did we lose ground on the Capitol? Yes. Did we fail to do our mission? No, because none of those elected officials, whether Republican, Independents, or Democrat, including their staff, none of them were injured. And I think, in a way, I think had they had been some of them injured, maybe that would have given a different rationale for them to justify or condemn what happened instead of condoning it.
Exactly.
and,
And you said
that's unfortunate.
yeah. Yeah, and you said earlier about switching to a more lethal mode during the intensity of the battle. I assure you, everyone feels that tension and that undertow to do that. And you made the correct decision, because if more people had died, it would have been a much worse outcome for our nation. And you acted with incredible courage because you kept your sword sheathed when a lot of other people would have drawn it.
I mean, one thing that people need to realize is once you draw your gun and you start shooting, you don't have nothing else to escalate to. And that is the challenge that you have, even whether you're justifiable or not. I was put in that situation that I almost did draw my weapon and start shooting. The other thing I think people need to realize is I don't think it would have mattered or done any difference, because so many thousands of people were trying to breach the Capitol, and there were people with arms trying to get in the Capitol. None of those people had gone through security. And the minute that we draw our weapons and start shooting, I'm accountable for each round that goes out, whether they're justifiable or not. And would it have made any difference? I don't think so. I don't think, because I could probably would have had shot 15 people, because that's what I have. No, 16 people. That's what I have in my handgun. 16 bullets initially, then 15, then another 15, and another 15. That's roughly 50 rounds, almost 60. I'm sorry. And after that, then what? Are my colleagues also going to start shooting? Are they also going to see and perceive the same threat that I did? You know, it's a hard choice, whatever way you look at it. Fitzsimmons was in the lucky end of that stick, and he addressed that. He apologized for it, and he was glad that I didn't do that, because he mentioned it on the day of his sentence as well.
Yeah, also because all of those people did not go through security, there was a slight chance that some of them were armed also. And I thought about this as well. If you had started shooting, or any of the police officers had started shooting, a lot of these people were really hungry for war.
Yeah, and that's
you never know.
That's one thing that I tell people too. I think individually, but yet collectively as a group, we kind of like realize, oh shit, our guns wouldn't matter whether we use it or not. And individually and collectively, we chose not to use our weapon, not because somebody told us not to. We were just trying to contain the atrocity and the violence that was happening that day. And I think they were waiting for us to use lethal force, and we were waiting for them to use lethal force in a way. And I think that's why I say it wouldn't matter. When somebody early asked, what's the difference between Iraq and here at the Capitol? Well, at the Capitol, I mean, in Iraq, I knew what I was signing up for. I was fucking going to work. I made my choices. I resigned myself of the possibility of losing my life defending this country, or in battle, or keeping my oath as a soldier. On January 6th, in our home country, our own capital, and all these people are assaulting me one way or the other, multiple times simultaneously, pushing me, kicking me, to the point of exhaustion. That's even though I experienced bombs and things in Iraq, this was worse in terms of the level of many times that I almost lost my life, one second after another. And that's the difference.
Amen.
And that's the difference that
I mean,
I'm saying.
you're a soldier and officer, so let me first off in front of everyone distinguish the difference. I'm a civilian, counterterrorism analyst, researcher guy / journalist photographer. I'm in Ukraine now for almost 2 years. And I had people in America. I did this with Harry earlier. I said this to him. They're like, "Hey, man, like, are you okay?" I'm like, "Am I okay? Am I near a church in America, a school, a mall, or the Capitol? No. Oh yeah, I'm in Ukraine. No, I'm good." And they know the juxtaposition is missiles, drones, and mass graves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no shitting what I'm saying that happens here, but the gaslight of what's happening in America is radically different than there's a gaslight happening on this side of the world, but you know what I'm saying? It's a
No,
gaslight.
I
So
get it.
so the difference between the Iraq on-off switch of like war and this other thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's this other thing, right?
And like I was saying, I mean, it's not that it was less dangerous. It was like one thing after another, after another, after another. Like I survived being dragged into the mob. Then I survived getting crushed to death when my oxygen is lacking on my lungs. Then I'm fighting inch by inch, hand-to-hand combat with not once that assaulted me that day. You know, do I survive a bomb and just keep moving after that, or do I spend 6 hours, 5 hours fighting the mob? You know, from the time that we had the initial breach at close to 1 o'clock, all the way to 5:30, we were fighting in the tunnel and on the West Front police line. So that's the difference when I say it was worse for me than Iraq. It's like one thing after another, after another, after another, and there was no help from the president of the United States when this happened on a clear day, couple 16 blocks away from the White House, and everybody else allegedly, including his own daughter and his advisors, are telling him, "Look, there's fighting in the Capitol. You need to call this off." The Speaker of the House is telling him, "Hey, you need to call off your people. You were doing this." All these people knew on January 6th what was happening and who was responsible, and yet today you ask them who they're going to vote for. Do you want Joe Biden or the guy who sent the mob to kill you all? They chose the guy who sent the mob to kill them all. And that's sad.
Yeah, also, no one, I imagine, in your line of work expects to be going to war with your own countrymen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. In-group, out-group psychology is what we didn't talk about, but essentially that's the thing I said was and I wrote this months before the insurrection. I said in-group, out-group psychology was going to be a factor, because when you see a bunch of folks out with the Shahada flag, dressed completely different than what we think is normal, and our accepted norm is always basically white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, frankly. Then there's what we call tolerable, like, oh, well, we're used to saying this, like Black Lives Matters, right? But I know, for instance, because I covered it in DC a few different times for Pacifica Radio, that the stature for certain protests was radically different, like you said. So, but let's get to the hands. Who we got?
Yeah, so there's a
before we
hand
wrap?
up that doesn't actually have a hand, and he's the only one here who hasn't spoken yet. So I'm going to let Kyle go ahead, and we're just about to wrap it up. So I'm asking everybody to be short, but nice to see you, Kyle.
Kyle, how are you doing, good brother?
I see y'all. Thanks. I'm doing good today, and it'll be short. It'll be short. And Brother Gonell, I appreciate everything that you've done, brother, and my heart goes out to all of y'all. And being someone that 15 years ago their income got slashed dramatically, I know what you're talking about and feeling, and I still to this day have bouts with depression, so up and down, because feeling that man pride to want to get out to provide for the family, but you just physically can't do it anymore. Mine was just physical, visual. Well, I can't hardly see anymore, but do take care of that mentally, brother, and best you can. That it's always going to be a long process since that day changed, and I hate that for you, and I feel for you on that aspect. Excuse me, but here's my one question that I've always been curious about. You may or may not can or want to answer it, but was there any of the Capitol Police that was in line with the what I'd say with the mob side that was coming in mentally and pulled back, and has that been dealt with inside the group that you know of? Was there any of that went on that maybe didn't come in there will help like they should have, or stuff like that,
I mean, there were investigation after January 6th done internally by the department. Some officers that did find to had done had things unbecoming to their position, and they were disciplined for it. I'm not saying that those people were supportive of what the mob was doing. It's just a perception of what they looked like they were trying to do. Didn't comport with themselves with what they should have done. I know I cannot speak about those things because I wasn't there in those areas. I know I could tell you what I did, even though when I was injured and battered, exhausted, and when I didn't see some of my colleagues in the front line, in
For me.
No,
Okay.
it went silent for
sorry,
me. I was wondering if mine
sorry,
just
sorry.
locked up.
I'm here.
I
I'm
couldn't
here.
hear what the
I'm here.
rest of it said. Sorry.
Probably my car just shut off.
I start running to all the mixers here, like, what's going on? What's going on?
Sorry. So as I was saying, I chose to stay at the mouth of the tunnel because I didn't want to give Metropolitan Police. And not saying that they were not as committed as I was. I'm saying that my thought was, if I live here, maybe they're not as committed and let those people in because they don't see Capitol Police officer here. That was not the case. Obviously, they were fighting with me, like officer like Fanon, Hodges, and others. But we were committed to stay there and do our job. And like I said, some of these officers, including I think there's one that's called Ryan Rayleigh. He was found out months later, actually no, almost a year later, and he got convicted and sentenced for his doing that. He was trying to help some of these mob after the fact that, telling them by how to evade the investigation, how not to answer and delete some things. And I'm like, dude, I'm one of you. I'm a Capitol Police officer. I was injured, and you helping them. And this is after you already know that more than 140 officers were injured. I couldn't believe it, and I'm glad that he's in jail for it.
Exactly. I know that Joanna had a question. Go ahead, Joanna. I want that question to come in.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, part of it comes from what Corey had mentioned earlier, and also a little bit from what Sensei said. First of all, I think that unless you've been in a crowd of people that is fighting like that, which I have because of my previous experience, you can't understand.
Anybody had that question?
Can you not hear me, Staff Sergeant?
Oh yeah, it looks like he can't hear you.
Okay, I'll go down and come back.
Yeah, just here. I'll drop you down. Just hit the speaker.
Yeah, request. Okay.
Got it. Okay, good. Yeah, let me just bring her back in. So she's asking you a question about speakers or permits. Hold on, we'll get that done. And thank you for being here, by the way. I knew this crowd was going to love you. We're going to bring Harry up too, because the America locked in with you guys, and we knew who did the work. So
yeah, absolutely. We all owe a debt of gratitude, that's for sure.
Okay, there I am again. Awesome. Thank you. Can you hear me now, Staff Sergeant?
Yeah,
okay, good,
yeah.
good. I was touching back to something that Corey had mentioned and also what Sensei had mentioned. But I'll get to the permit point first and then talk about the crowd control. I spent, as I said earlier, a lot of years managing really large nightclubs and doing street events as well. And one of the things that struck me on the day was that part of the plan was not to have permits, to have it be a spontaneous march. Because as you know, and as anybody knows that's had to deal with crowd control, you want to deploy.
It's broken up.
You can't hardly hear me. Can you hear me?
It's breaking up. I can't hear.
Okay. Is anyone else having that problem?
No, I actually can hear her. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So
how much of that did you hear? Do you need her to repeat anything?
I didn't hear anything.
Okay.
It
Nothing.
was in and out.
Can you hear
Can
her?
you hear me now, Staff Sergeant?
No. I could hear you, but not.
Oh, that's
Staff
me,
Sergeant,
actually.
turn your Wi-Fi. Staff Sergeant, turn your Wi-Fi off
So I
and then
mean,
back
if
on.
you heard the question, just ask me. I'll respond it. So.
Tell him to turn his Wi-Fi off and then turn it back on. It'll fix his connection.
Okay. If you
actually, hold on a second, Joanna. Staff Sergeant, do you want to try that trick? Just turn off your Wi-Fi and then turn it right back on your settings, and then you might be able to hear her. Sometimes when we get technical advice, I have no clue, so I take it from people who know.
I mean, I think it's working because I could hear you. I just can't hear her.
Yeah, you know what? Joanna, try going down again and coming back up, and let's see if we can hear you then.
Yeah, and take someone else while we sort this out.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that?
Okay,
Cece, you've
I'll
had your
drop.
hand up forever.
And I had my mic off, so I've been trying to say something. So
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
it's okay. No, not your fault. I'm going, what's wrong with this? Oh yeah, microphone. Also, Joanna, if you can text the question, but I want to go to Malarkey's question because she brought up a name that I've been asking. In fact, I asked Harry about this guy. Go ahead, Malarkey. I don't want to take the question out of your hands.
Okay. I guess I lied before when I said I didn't have a question.
But you brought up the name that's been bugging me all night, and I just keep not getting to it.
Yeah, so when Kyle asked you that question, Staff Sergeant, about other officers, he reminded me of this name that I have seen and this person that has been out speaking, Tariq Johnson, who has said, that like it was an inside
I don't hear anybody.
job. Can you hear me? No?
She's asking, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so she's asking, could you comment real quick before we go? I think they can hear you, so I'll just do it this way.
Well, Chris, if I could just finish. So what I was going to say is that, like he's, and you're familiar with him, that he's done these like grifty spaces.
Nope, can't hear nothing.
And he's blaming.
So you want me to get out and then come back in?
Here's what I could do. You don't have to leave. What I'll do is drop you out of speaker and bring you back up with speaker. Let's see if it does that. I'll remove and bring back. Okay. And then invite. There we go. So we'll rotate that out. Because, yeah, I do like Malarkey being able to ask the question. Let's see how we do. I think we may have it. Let's see. Technical stuff. For those who don't know, actually, what you're doing is you're changing your voice over IP channel at that point. That's why if you leave from one file to the other, you basically break your phone call. FYI.
Techno weenie not.
That's why I'm gonna master these spaces technical things. I've already figured out we're operating at 16K, and I'm a webmaster so old I used to do way before even real audio.
Okay.
Can you please come over to my house and fix my technology?
I'm back in.
I'm in. There we go. Okay, so let's just check Malarkey. Okay. You guys can hear each other?
Staff Sergeant, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. I said I guess I was lying when I said I didn't have a question. So when Kyle brought up those officers that, wondering if there were any that you got the sense that really, were kind of like more on the side of the insurrectionists or just not doing everything that they could, I guess I actually have two questions. The first one is about Tariq Johnson, which is this person that I've seen out there who was an officer at January 6th, who now claims, that it was an inside job, and Chief Pittman, was to blame for it, and obviously, I know, and everybody with a brain knows that that's bullshit. But I was just wondering if you had any comments as to that, if you've had any interactions with him, what is it, just grifting? What's the deal with this guy?
I mean, I'm not going to disparage him. He's at some point he was my supervisor and a friend, and he still is a friend of mine. I'm not going to disparage. I mean, I had expressed my sentiments about things that happened on that day to him personally. I don't want to tell you guys what my conversation, because those are private with him and myself. But I also understand where he's coming from in terms of the frustration of how certain things were handled by the department. Do I agree with all those things, all his concern and the department concern? Of course, but there are certain things that I'll let him. If you guys have any questions for him to tell you, and I'm not going to disparage him or have display my conversations with him, because I do consider him a good friend still, regardless of what he says or done or anything like that.
And let me capitalize on that for a minute to bring us back home. Is that fair? I think this is a good place to bring us back home. And I'm glad you said that, because I know that I had a snarky reaction to his comments. He came into a lot of spaces very confrontational, and I don't have a relationship with him, so I have that in it, but you do. And truth is, on my part of the world, I have complicated friendships. We all have complicated friendships. Someone who and to me, one of the things I've said, and I'd like your thoughts on this, I've said to this particular audience, as a counter-terrorist, there's two ways we deal with you. We basically eliminate you JDAM style, or throw you in jail, or boot kick your door down, throw you in jail style, or we talk you back. And talking you back is a lot more work. It's a lot more effort, but those friendships matter. Would you like to say something about that? How we can look at where we have, because for instance, what he's saying
I
on,
mean,
yeah,
one thing that people need to understand. I do cover this in my book, American Shield too. Is whether I agree with you, I don't have to agree with you 100% to work with you. I mean, my style of working sometime in leadership is, if it had nothing to do with me in my section or my responsibility, then I don't need to worry about what you're doing, and that would not call any attention to myself. I'm not going to find myself across the street into a supervisory investigation type of thing. And just like anybody else in this country, we are susceptible to and subjected to some of the political things that happen around the nation, especially working in that environment. I know there are certain things that happen that shouldn't have happened. I know that there are certain things that happened to him or were done to him that probably should have been handled differently. Had I taken some of those action myself, I probably not. But those are things that people make decisions and action based on what they thought at that moment that was the best. I'm not going to judge him. I expressed my view to him, and that was between me and him. I'm not going to disperse or say anything else on that topic.
respect. Yeah.
Other than that, he's still a friend of mine. I understand where he's coming from, and I hope that he make have a good future in his life.
Respect. Yeah.
And
And
I
actually,
still
yeah.
talk to him once in a while, so it's nothing like I hate the guy or anything like that. He's a good friend. I used to play basketball with him, and again, very good guy, and he's just been dealing with certain things that a lot of us had not done in the past.
Fair. All right. Final comments, so we can wrap. I actually wouldn't mind hanging out with Brother Man all night. It's 4 o'clock in the morning here, and at 4:30, 3:30 in the morning here, and
I
you've
got
been
a few minutes because I had to go back inside my house and do some family.
exactly. But let me ask you a question before we get to that. Would you mind coming back to this audience another time?
Sure. Why not?
Exactly. All right.
Chris, if I could just really quickly, I appreciate that answer so much, and I respect you so much more for that too, and I think that it's a really good reminder, to respect, people and try to see where they're coming from. And my apologies if it didn't come out that way, because this is such an emotional topic. And I guess like a larger conversation that we all have, a lot of us that talk about this regularly, is, how to forgive fellow citizens who, sympathize with some really reprehensible traitorous, behavior that we see from other people in this country, and recognizing like where they're coming from. And, if you can, resolve your differences and your viewpoints, I think that that's a really great example for the rest of us to follow. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Malarkey.
You're
That is
welcome.
such a good point. And I believe that some of the smartest people that we know, I think everyone knows someone who is really smart, who was radicalized by a certain ideology. And it's really hard to reconcile that. But, everyone has their reasons for believing certain things. And we just have to.
Yeah, but the thing, and I don't mean to
Go
cut you
ahead.
off. The thing is, people need to realize is 1 + 1 is equal 2, not 20, not 16, whatnot. And do not let your own lying eyes to deceive you, like the former president keeps saying. Like, you listen to what he says and do and hear, and yet the people continue to excuse him for whatever reason. I think, in my opinion, that you are a smart person. You know what's good. You know that if January 6 happened by another group, they want us to do exactly what we did, and possibly use lethal force immediately, regardless who those people were. And, again, the difference between people message that they say at the border is an invasion, at the Capitol is a peaceful protest, or innocent people walking and breaking the doors and the windows of the Capitol. It's the narrative how people portray and see. When people lock themselves in a silo and only listen to one section of the people reinforcing those things that they hear from the leader. I mean, it's one thing. Like, going to give you an example. When people say, like, well, not people, when the former president say, you know what, a lot of people, he goes something crazy, outrageous. Let's say umbrellas are bad. Then he going to start saying, well, I hear a lot of people saying the umbrellas are bad. Well, where did they hear that from? You're the one saying to them the umbrellas are bad. And then when you hear it back from them, you see, this is my point. A lot of people are saying it. It must be true. And it's not true. So people need to realize that is a con narrative that they're trying to feed to themselves. And how's that working when he said in 2016 Mexico is paying for the wall? Oh wait, did he finish the wall? Did he pay for the wall? Oh, did Mexico pay for it? And now he's saying, well, he's gonna run again on creating the wall and fixing the wall that he never built. So come on, man. How disingenuous can you be? How many times is he gonna trick you? How many times he gonna let you down? Start digging, because the more you dig, the deeper you get. And that personality that people are investing their time to the point of looking like they are in a cult, living like they're in a cult. Flag Trump's effigies, you name it. I'm like, just because you don't see the other party doing crazy shit like that doesn't mean he doesn't have the support. But you also have to understand where they're coming from, whether they feel attacked on the represented, or afraid of changes. People need to also understand those things, and it's up to the people, elected officials, are empowered to alleviate some of this concern, and not just look out for a certain portion of the population when these changes are happening, because it affects everybody. Just make it inclusive and as less disruptive as possible, in my opinion.
Amen. I think Joanna's got this last comment because she's going to finally get that permit question on its table, I believe.
Right? Can you hear me, Staff Sergeant?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
There we
good.
go. Okay.
Yay! Victory.
We made it.
We made
Lima
it.
Charlie, Lima Charlie, loud and clear.
It only took a couple of times. I just wanted to talk about the multi-level distraction that was happening that day, and part of that, in my opinion, having done permitting for marches, for outdoor events, etc., you have to deploy resources, water, porta potties, medical, when you've got a large amount of people walking from one place to another. In my opinion, part of the plan was using all these multi-level distractions, not pulling permits, not letting anybody know ahead of time, essentially ambushing the Capitol with thousands of people. That people don't talk about, no permits were pulled. And that's a really big deal. It's a super, as a police officer, that that's a huge danger to the public. And your dual role as a defender of the Capitol and a defender of the public means that was another form of distraction. It wasn't just these so-called peaceful people walking around the Capitol that were distracting you by having to make sure they weren't going in the wrong place, etc. But it was also the fact that these people there was no medical attention for them. There were all of these things that you had to attend to as well. And I just think that for some reason that's been sort of skipped over in the narrative. And also I wanted to comment that a lot of people have watched violence. Sensei was saying something about this earlier, about what it's like to be in hand-to-hand combat. And the hours that you're talking about are insane. I mean, I've done it for short periods of time with big crowds, and I'm talking minutes. And it was the most exhausting minutes of my life. So I'm just overwhelmed by the bravery and the endurance and everything that you did that day. But I was wondering if you could comment on this idea of sort of multi-level distraction that was happening that day.
I mean, one of the things that there were, to my knowledge, I think there were some permits for small groups. Usually permits are awarded or permitted or approved for 15 to 20 people at a time at the Capitol per policy. And after a certain amount of people reach it, then they had to separate it into different groups or get a bigger permit or deny. All those things were not happening because obviously on January 6th, we had thousands and thousands of people who didn't care about somebody else's life other than stopping the certification of the transfer of power. They were looking for trouble. They didn't follow the law. They didn't listen to the police officers. Their intentions were clear, and that was to be disrupted. And I'm going to give you an example. During the police line that we were trying to hold, there was a member of the mob. I don't know who, but they threw the American flag on the floor. And then they had the audacity to say, pick up the flag, pick up the flag, pick up the damn flag. You're desecrating the flag. You are desecrating the flag. I'm like, who the fuck threw the flag in there in the first place? Yeah, motherfucker did it. Not us. Not us. And they were using that as a rallying cry to incite the mob, to make them more belligerent, to more aggressive towards police officers. And people were enraged because we wouldn't pick up the flag. And when we actually did pick the flag, then somebody else throw another flag on the floor to get the crowd going. So that's another type of distraction. And then you begin to listen and hear the clanging barriers being broken apart, the black barriers that we had in place for the inaugural stage, separating the crowd and the people. All those things were broken apart, metal pieces, and then use against us, lance and spear, in a way that would hurt and injure officers. And some of the officers who didn't have that helmet and protection, they did get injured. They did get hit in the head. I think Officer Jeffrey Smith, was hit in the head with an object, because all those things were happening. So there are a lot of things that they say that they were not doing. How did they not be there on January 6th at the Capitol and on the Capitol ground? Then none of those things would have happened. And they weren't peaceful. They weren't peaceful at all. They may want to make people think that they were peaceful, but they weren't. The closer and closer they got to the entrances, to the doors, to the windows, and to the tunnel, the more violent they were. And those people in the back, few rows or 20, 50 feet, 100 feet away from those entrances, yes, they were peaceful, but not because they didn't get a chance. They were peaceful because they were not close enough to where we were. If you look at how many rioters went through the tunnel and rotated in and out, despite the violence, despite the chemical spray that was coming out, emanating from the tunnel, despite the violence that they heard, despite the grunting, despite the them taking the shields away from us, the batons, the ladder going through the tunnel, the guardrail going through the tunnel, all these things were indicator that they was fighting, and yet they chose to get closer and closer and closer to take part into the violence. And when they say it was peaceful, I digress to disagree with them.
Bingo. So I want to say thank you tremendously for being here. There's a lot of people here I know that were dying to talk to you or hear from you. This is a community that I said is very, very focused, as you know, because as you said, many people over time have reached out to you both to learn from you what happened and also to catch your back. And I know I say that for a lot of people here. Thank you for being here, my man. And everyone buy his book. This is
please
one way
do.
you
Please do.
Absolutely.
It's also available in Spanish. I made the translation along with somebody else. It reads perfectly, both in English and Spanish. If you don't like reading or you want to go through it faster, buy the audio version. It's amazing. The guy who did that, he even accentuated the voices of different people. He did an amazing job. It's a book not only about January 6th, it's about sacrifices. And since I came to this country, I had sacrificed a lot. I sacrificed protecting my family, sacrificing, shielding people from certain things, shielding myself, shielding the country, shielding soldiers, shielding the capital, and shielding the truth as well. So if you can, please write a review wherever you purchase the book as well.
Write a review, and let me ask you this, because I've been in Ukraine for 2 years. I'm a Texan, not of this blood. On July 4th, I get wished big Independence Day, and I'm like, oh man, this is so painful. Hey, thanks. That's what I usually say. Like, I think you guys appreciate it more than we do. You sort of know your colonial oppressors still. They're bombing you every day. But Beacon on the Hill, final thought, Beacon on the Hill. Why is America still the Beacon on the Hill?
For me?
Yeah.
Like I said,
or is it?
As bad things or pessimistic as things seems to be, I remain focused in the positive way. Like I mentioned to you earlier, my interaction with my wife at that time on January 6th, January 7th, she now understanding what I was doing and sacrificing, going back to work. And then last year explaining to her that I did that for our country. I did that for her future, even if it meant putting my life on the line, that I was willing to do that. And like I said to you earlier, tomorrow, I'm hopeful because tomorrow she's going to take her oath of becoming a U.S. citizen, something that on January 6th, in my opinion, she was more concerned about my life and the country, and not something that probably would have not happened if the outcome of January 6th would have been the other way around. I remain hopeful that people are going to learn my story of sacrifices. The book is not just about January 6th, it's about a lot of things that obstacles and adversity and challenges that I overcome. I also want to thank you. Stay safe over there in Ukraine. And also thank you for inviting me and everyone else to listen to what I had to say, including the online stream,
Absolutely.
Officer Hodges, and I think somebody else was in there that I know. But thank you guys.
I'd like to say also thank you so much. I think this has been really great. I look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you for all you do. You are an inspiration. And congratulations to your wife, by the way. I think that every American citizen should have to take those citizenship exams and swear an oath to the Constitution. Unfortunately, those born here don't have to, but I admire those who do.
If they stop banning books, then maybe they'll learn something.
Absolutely. And please, everyone, retweet the tweets that are in the nest or the posts that are in the nest. There's the audiobook link. There is the book purchase link. And there's a podcast with Staff Sergeant Gonell. All sorts of stuff. Please follow him if you don't already. And thanks everyone for listening to this, and most of all, Chris too. But I'll say my goodbyes in a minute. But go ahead, Staff Sergeant, if you wanted to say something else, and then I'll continue.
Last thing I'm going to say is thank you guys for inviting me, and I hope you do really read the book and then let me know what you guys think. That'd be great, because it'll be to gather information and do something that I'll be proud of. I am proud of it, and I hope you guys as well. Thank you. Blessings to you all, and stay safe.
Thank you. So one other thing I wanted to say, Chris, because you do so much of this, you do so much amazing work in putting these things together. This was, it took some planning, and the videos that you're putting together right now, all of that work. I just wanted to invite everybody to follow him on Patreon, subscribe, please. And if you feel so inclined, please give. It's hard to be over there, and any amount that you give on the little cash thing that's on NatSec's profile, that'll go to getting more and more content.
It's basically helping to
people on the
develop
road.
stuff.
Yeah.
So there'll be some more stuff happening throughout December. We'll actually talk about it a little bit over the weekend. So there's some also, like I said, we'll have more of this conversation later. So we're going to let our wonderful guest and friend go, and I want to thank everyone for being here, and appreciate your focus on the democracy in America. And for those of you who pay attention to the rest of the world situation, thank you for all your help, and we'll see you all soon.
Yeah. And thank you, Chris. This was a great conversation. Really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who was speaking. So good to hear your voices. And thanks for listening.
See you soon.
Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more interviews. Make sure to go get Sergeant Gonell's book, American Shield, to read an insider view on defending America on January 6th. We thank the Sergeant for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe below. NatSecMedia is supported by viewers and listeners like you. Subscribe to our Patreon page and visit our website today.